Hi. So, my name is Em Seikkanen, and by day and several evenings, I am the marketing and communications lead at Agile Data Engine. We're a daughter company of Solida, and then I will let my panelists introduce themselves. We can start with, I guess, Lari, and then work across.
I'm going to get to practice my elocution here. I hope everyone can hear us at the back. I'm Lari. About a month ago, I was a CMO for a startup, Maria 01, and now I actually employ myself using generative AI in a field called SEO, which I think quite a few people will know since this is an awesome marketers club here. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk about the topic and share a lot of interest with our other panelists.
And hi, I'm Erica Terranova. I'm growth marketing lead at Moving Characters, and in my spare time I'm also a mentor for international talent and founders of startups, especially women founders.
And hello, I'm Colm O'Searcoid. I'm the content marketing manager at Lead Desk. I'm also one of the moderators at the Awesome Marketers community, and I've been working in content marketing for a few years, and currently have been in the field of AI, especially in the customer service game, for about 5 years now. So I've got a few things to say about it. And everyone can hear me at this level? Yes. Okay. Okay.
Okay, so I think we have a couple of different viewpoints here, and I guess the plan is that we'll kind of have a bit of a discussion for about half an hour and then open for questions, and the lovely Carol is going to be helping me keep time because I can't see a clock anywhere. I guess with all of the more recent advancements, like AI is the big talking point of this year. How do you feel about AI, both personally and then as a marketer? Is there anything really cool you've been able to do with it? I guess maybe we can start with Colm on this one.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned you've been very hands-on for 5 years, so.
Oh, yeah. Especially how AI has changed over the last year and a half. It's really, really interesting for content. We had a brief discussion a little bit earlier the week to talk about what our feelings are with AI and whether you should be threatened or not about it. And for me, I don't think anybody should be threatened by AI. It's a tool like any other, and you can use it the way you want to make your processes better. The only thing I would say is that I don't think it can replace any good marketer. So it's something that you shouldn't go crazy with, but if you use it intelligently, we'll go through some examples maybe, then I think you can really optimize your content marketing, your marketing in general, and speed up all your processes. Now over to you.
Well, I have a very different opinion on AI, and that's because I work for an art-based brand and I represent the point of view of artists and copyright owners. I'm also a writer in my free time. So I don't think that a lot of the developments within AI are positive. I think that the use of copyrighted material without consent, without compensation, without recognition is illegal and should be stopped. That does not mean that the whole field of artificial intelligence as a whole has to be thrown away. Of course, there are positive aspects of AI, but I think both come in the form of, for example, medical imagineering and trying to make lives of people better. But when it comes to letting robots make art, I'm very much against that. I think we should have robots free time for humans to make more art, not having robots making art instead of us. So I feel very strongly about that. At the same time, I think it's extremely important for any marketer to really understand the technology at a deeper level. I really hate like the AI grift. So just people like sprouting terms like prompt engineering without understanding what it even means, and trying to sell you services of just that it's basically like GPT wrappers. And instead, I think marketers really need to understand how a large language model is built, what goes into that, encoder, decoder, attention mechanism, all of these things, and really understand what is behind the technology and where it could go. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion. I represent the more extreme side of the spectrum probably, but I'm very open to an open discussion about it.
Good. Thank you, Anna. It's a really interesting panel because there are very different viewpoints here. I represent early stage startups, specifically desperate ones who need to get things done very quickly. So my background for the last year was that I was in Maria 1 in a very early stage startup where I was actually looking around the room. Is Joe here? He's not. But we had the worst start of the year. We were supposed to get funding, we didn't. And out of very sad situation, we had to actually cut practically all of our content marketing budget. So including our very talented content marketer. So for the last year, I've been at the kind of deep end of going straight into trying to do things very much more efficiently with AI. And out of that, I would kind of describe myself as an AI punk, where I've been trying to do things a lot more efficiently with disregard to what has been done before, in a way that I don't think that in terms of the copyright and so forth, I have done everything according to the rule book that Erica would describe, but at the same time, I think we're in a very interesting realm as marketers, and I think the experiences we've had for the last year as a very early stage startup doing things by pretty much AI-driven approach, I think everyone in the room should pay attention to what's going on, and perhaps there's a few things that you can incorporate to your daily work that kind of sit in the middle ground of where we're headed. Interesting.
Yes. Yes. So I guess we'll start at the other end this time. Lari, you mentioned that you've been with a very kind of desperate, in your words, early stage startup. And I'm wondering, like, I think you shared a use case on LinkedIn a few weeks ago maybe about like the types of results you were able to get. Can you share any of that secret sauce? I think there are probably a lot of people here, not just me, who are very like kind of curious.
Yeah. So the background is, for the last year, I was in the space of enterprise software where things tend to move very slowly, and building up a brand or building up a sales pipeline takes a long time. However, at the beginning of the year, we basically had to shut down practically all of our marketing, any paid marketing, any events, and anything besides our website. And that made us really rethink of, if we only have a limited runway and we really need to get results before the end of the year, what do we do? And kind of partly to do with my background in terms of SEO, we made the decision that we would try to create, 2 or 3 years worth of work within 6 months, and really kind of take the fast route where arguably the quality of content we were producing in the beginning of it were not perhaps at the par that we would have expected if we did things patiently with large resources. But the efficiency play that we did go through did end up resulting in a massive increase in website visits. Also, by the end of the year, we had a very solid pipeline that unfortunately didn't convert fast enough. But it did prove the case that AI can make a marketer a lot more efficient than they perhaps thought they were, as a tool, not as a replacement to who they are.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah.
Do you want to continue going?
Well, I have a question
Yes.
more. Like, one of the things I've been seeing here, like when it comes to how AI is being utilized in this way, where you're like pumping out 1,000 articles a day, and like this is reminiscent of other things which used to happen about 10 or 15 years ago, which Google really fucked over. I'm going to use bad language, by the way. I'm sorry about that, but that's just the way I am. I'm Irish. It's in my culture. So the thing is that like I've been looking at like case studies, for example, like Jake Ward, who's very interesting because he was using the byword tool, and that like accelerated his growth on SEO like 1,000 times. But then after about 3 months, he got really hit by Google. And actually, just the other day, I'm waiting to see the results. But a marketer I really respect, which is Steve McDonald. He's a really good SEO guy in Estonia, and he has also started doing a little bit different. So we've got Jake Ward, who's doing the huge extreme, where he's doing like articles, pumping them out as much as possible. Then we've got Stephen McDonald, and he's got a new method which he's tried, where he's updating existing articles and using AI to update the existing articles better. But then, like, my question to you is like, you increase this, Google might penalize you, and that's okay. Like, we know that might happen, but like, even still, like, what kind of leads do you get out of this? Like, what is actually the quality of the money that you could possibly get out of it? Like, what's the ROI?
I'll try to keep those both in line and also be brief, so we also have different viewpoints here. Fundamentally, it's not a question of generating vast amounts of garbage, and I think most people understand that. Like the byline example that was mentioned, there was a case of a SEO kind of black hat hacker who basically took a competitor who had built a library of 6,000 or so articles, and he copied it, like completely copied what the other person had done, and that is practically illegal, at the very least unethical, and eventually Google hammered down and he lost it. In the case where what I'm talking about, it's not a case of like machine kind of generating garbage. It's a question of how do you become an authority in whatever topic you're running, and covering that topic as broadly and efficiently as possible, while still understanding that your opinion about these things can get better over time. So kind of a viewpoint would be that I'm not saying you should run and generate 6,000 articles because you can just use ChatGPT to do it. I'm saying that you can probably create 4 or 5 articles more per week than you realize, as long as you keep those articles around the topic that you really feel passionate about and you have an authority of. Then becoming a topic authority can happen a lot more quicker. Welcome, Joe. Come on in. Front row's waiting for you. And in terms of the results, I think the reality was that it was, in our case, we were able to close one very large hotel, large global company with a 14-day sales cycle. So it was an immense, like from beginning to end, it was a classic, snatch and grab of someone was interested in a topic, we brought the solution, they bought. But it was too early to actually scale it up in our case. We ran out of runway before we really saw the end results.
Yeah.
So I think for me the problem is is your B2B marketing boring? Like it comes down to that. Is it so boring that it's so easy to just get a machine to write the exact same thing and slightly even better, and there is no difference? And then the question is that, and I think the time of the approach to B2B marketing needs to change. It has been obviously changing for a long time. In the context in which we are, I can see how that would work, because to be honest, so much of the B2B marketing content is garbage. So you're just comparing it with more garbage. I read a lot of B2B marketing content myself, but a lot of it is just not good. It's not interesting, right? So obviously I come from a very different background, and nowadays I'm more in the B2C space, in which if you're not interested, there is no way of moving forward. But I think this is a good challenge to think, what is the point of content? Because my point has always been, if you cannot be bothered to write it, why should I be bothered to read it? And is the point of content just to get some visibility on search so that you guide people to your website? Or is the point of content to establish that you are a leader and you are a brand that can be trusted, etc.? And I can see, like, for example, if we think about you decided that the strategic choice is go all in into SEO. And then I think about now startups that are doing the building in public on LinkedIn and like being extremely transparent. We have Woodpecker, we have Talent Bee, for example, and they're taking this approach of like brand building through the human people working at the company. And obviously their content is also assisted by AI. I'm not saying it's all written by them. They've been honest about that. But it's a kind of a different approach. You don't maybe need the blog, but like you are building in public, and that's kind of the value that people resonate with. So my main point is that maybe when it comes to B2B marketing especially, the problem is not whether or not you're using AI. The problem is, are we using a playbook from 5 years ago? And are you actually, whatever you are using, what is the point of the content you are making? I would start with the why before looking at the how.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I'm going to piggyback on that because like one of the things that, we've been taught in content marketing especially is, growth through organic search. And everything is SEO driven. And this is maybe no longer the case. Especially when we see what Google have been trying to do after generative AI has come out over the last year. In August last year, they announced that they'd be going with generative search. Now, 10 years, we know this already. For 10 years, Google has been trying to get rid of first clicks. Everything in your top search results has just been getting lower and lower on the page and basically below the fold. So frequently asked questions, snippets, all these sorts of things, like related images, graphs, all that, they're all taking up a huge amount of space as well as the 2 or 3 ads. So then in August, Google comes out with generative search, which they have thankfully backpedaled on a little bit, but the fact of the matter remains is they're still going towards the one-click idea, zero-click idea. So is your content actually going to get you customers if you go by an SEO-only approach? And this is more of a distribution problem. And the answer actually is probably not. SEO is, I'm not saying SEO is dead or anything. That's a stupid thing to say. It's the same thing as email marketing is not dead. No type of marketing is dead. But there are better ways to do it. Now, what we are going to see is we were talking about this earlier. There was the New York Times case with ChatGPT a couple of months ago, where the New York Times has sued ChatGPT for using all of their content verbatim. And then what Google does is they buy the content from Reddit. So the content from Reddit is very interesting because one of the things about AI in general, which everybody has to understand, is do you remember when you were in school and you had this maybe a teacher would have taught you this, where you had all these colors in a circle and then you spin it around and it makes this kind of gray. Well, that's what AI is. You spin it around and it's gray because it takes all the pieces of content from everywhere, it spins it around and makes it this horrible gray. So it's not actually that interesting. It doesn't have anything. It's an average of all other content. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that if you are spewing out average content all the time, that means it's not going to be interesting to your users. Google will see it's not interesting. And then when we go back to the Reddit approach, Reddit has all of its content ranked by people.
Yeah.
So you've got upvotes and downvotes for everything. So this is a feedback model. So what that does is that all the data which is there, then AI can look at it and go, hey, people found this very useful. Therefore, this is something that we should be more interested in. And this is something that I think Google will incorporate into their EAT strategy. It's going to incorporate into their helpful content updates, everything like that. It's going to be whether there's user-generated feedback on the content, which ultimately means that you shouldn't be solely making your content for keywords. Maybe it's still going to work for the next year or two, but after that, you're basically going to be fucked. After that, if you don't have like content which actually says something and is written by experts, and like Fast Company saw this like 8-10 years ago, and a few medical websites also, I can't remember their names, but what they've started doing is they put author bylines on all of their articles. And they showcase the expertise of all the authors of the articles. And I think this is something that people will have to start doing when they start building content. They actually have to research their audience, as usual, write the content for that audience, use experts to write the content, showcase that the experts have written the content, and show that to Google somehow. Then they also have to get people to buy in and vote on this so that it's something which is rated as helpful. And AI is not going to be able to do that. Not really. Not like from, hey, I'll just make me an article like that. That's not possible for it to do because it's just an average of everything. So, yeah, like, yep, as I said, you're gonna have to create that sort of content. And eventually that's what is going to rank, if ranking is the thing we're talking about, because again, we're going back to zero click. So if we want to be at the top of zero click, and I imagine because of the New York Times the New York Times lawsuit, Google will have to credit who they're actually taking the content from in the zero click above the fold. That means if your articles and your information is good enough for Google to use in their zero click results, and that's only going to happen if it's done by experts, then you're going to hit the top of Google, the real top of Google, once they start bringing in their generative search. Mm-hmm. So that was the long-winded explanation I'm going for.
Lari, you look like you had some spicy thoughts.
Yeah.
In
I think
answer to that.
I don't disagree that kind of if you go to ChatGPT and you ask it to create an article about something, it will give you an average of what you expect that topic. That's the average opinion about the topic. What's interesting to do is think about going to ChatGPT with a very interesting question. One of the approaches I tried over the last year is I started inputting to ChatGPT articles by, or like research, visuals like tables from McKinsey and Deloitte and those guys, and I asked it to create articles on these. And it was fascinating how with a single image, ChatGPT could understand exactly what McKinsey consultants had spent hundreds or thousands of dollars analyzing with customer research, and then they gave the same insights that McKinsey could give just based on one image. That was very interesting. So my point is that kind of you can not influence the output if you're asking generic questions, but you can influence the input. Yes. Another interesting thing you can do while we talk about the kind of thought leadership aspect of producing good content to kind of social media is you can get a lot of value if you just literally take your CEO down, record them using a software like Descript, where it literally just transcribes every word they say, and then input that into ChatGPT as an opinion, where all of a sudden the opinions you're generating are not based on the average of the world. It's based on a very specific input that it is just a lot more efficient at creating. So you should, as marketers, think about what are the inputs you bring to generative AI to get the output you're looking for.
Yeah.
Erica, what do you have a comment on?
Yes.
Like, I mean, I guess ethics of these two maybe specific input sources, CEO's words. So I guess with his consent, and then like McKinsey and other consultancy.
Exactly. I think we are like not. This is something you should think about at the very least. Then you make your own informed decisions. But this idea that you can just input anything into a large language model that does not belong to you is something I'm very much against. In the beginning, AI companies said, no, this is all anonymized. It's not really like, it's not really taken from copyrighted sources. That was the first thing they said. Then it came out that they deliberately picked at least 600,000 artists to copy their style of, among whom Tove Jansson, without permission. it came out that they have database of stolen books. So hundreds of thousands of stolen books. So you can go and ask them to make a book in the style of a writer that took 5 years to write their book and just put it on Amazon immediately and sell. I think you need to know what's in the databases that you're using. You need to know what is in the large language models that you're using. And you need to know what are your rights if you're inputting data in there. Because that's a big thing that I see, like, it's not really discussed a lot. Whatever you're putting in it, a lot of people are putting proprietary data, confidential data, which is crazy. And also, nowadays, we are seeing a situation in which the effects of what you're putting online, you have zero control of, especially now, not only like with text to text, but especially with text to image and text to video. Anybody can take a photo of you and make a deep fake porn and send it to all your colleagues. And you have absolutely zero recourse if that happens. And if we know one thing, is the moment this type of technology is available, it's going to be used for the following reasons. Harass and humiliate and put women out of the internet as much as possible, because that's usually what happens. Create child pornography. And we already know that, for example, in the Stability AI database, there was a lot of child pornography, even if they said that there wasn't. Propaganda. How are you going to know that this video of war and atrocity is real or not? Surveillance state. Your face can be mapped, and who cares how many errors can bring in a kind of unjust and racist racial system, like justice system. So there are so many implications that we are kind of getting excited like a kid in a candy shop without thinking of the very real consequences. There are already children who have committed suicide because of deep fake porns, and we're just like letting it happen. So I really think it's important that as marketers and as human beings, you really think about, understand what these tools are doing, what's in there. Now all the AI companies have gone from, no, we don't have any copyrighted content, to, okay, yes, we have copyrighted content, but it's anonymized. And now, okay, yes, we have copyrighted content and we're stolen the style and we are like replicating exactly like the style of the artist, writer, etc. But we couldn't make these AI tools without the copyrighted content, so you just let us use it. That's the latest one. And I don't think that's sustainable. I know regulation is coming. I'm very much involved with the artist protection and European Union law. So I hope that changes will be coming, but we also know that legislation is law. And in the meantime, it's very hard to put back what is outside of the Pandora's box once it's out. So be careful. Do your research on the tools that you're using. Think about how they can be used against you as well.
Well, one thing to not counter, but add to that is that we've been using quite a lot of AI tools for customer service, and some of the tools we have is for example, it helps customer service agents write emails in seconds or reply to things without typing and stuff like that. And when we worked on our AI, we specifically did it on our own server with our own data. And when it comes to the customer's data, it's segmented into just the customer. And this is something that we were doing, of course, because it's just logical to do, but also because the customers are asking for it. Because if you're a customer and you're giving access to an AI of another company for your data, basically what's going to happen is you're not going to be eligible for standards like SOC 2, ISO 27001, all these security standards, which means you're never going to be able to do big contracts with any governments, big enterprise companies, anything like that. So if you're inputting company data, other company data into ChatGPT, then you're in a world of trouble. And another thing that I want to bring over with Lari's point with the transcript, I've used AI for quite a few things. Subtitling is one of my favorites. I actually used to work as a transcriptionist for a company called rev.com, which is probably out of business now. And the way it does subtitles is absolutely fantastic. It does it really, really quickly, and all you have to do is correct a few words, and it's brilliant. But then you can take that, like you do the transcript, and you can make posts out of it, you can make content out of it. But this is all still using your own data. I've tried it out with interviews, and I'm not totally happy with the output. You do a half-hour interview, and you want AI to make you like a 1,200 word article. Like if it's a half-hour interview, it should be able to make 1,200 words. It's only able to do 500, and it's also generic. It's horrible. So I've taken a different approach to it, which actually helps you as a writer. So instead, I've told it, hey, I want you to look at the transcript. I want you to I want you to divide it into like different topics for a blog post. Under each of those topics, I want you to take out 5 quotes out of the interview, list them out for me, then put underneath that a writing prompt for this, and then do that for each of those. In that way, then I've got basically a structure for a blog post, and I can go through it, I can quote the person in the article, write the article, it's written in a good style, it's written well, it doesn't use these crazy buzzwords, which ChatGPT loves for some reason, delve into everything.
Yeah.
Transformative.
Oh yes.
Transformative.
But it also means that you are actually you have to do a little bit of work, but your output is so much better. So much better. But the fact of the matter remains, it still saves a huge amount of time, because then you don't have to go through the whole transcript, take notes, all of that. It's a note-taking machine that you're using it for. And that's okay. I have no problem with doing that. And I think that really speeds you up when it comes to creating any written content, for example. And then you can repurpose it for social posts and so on and so forth. But yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, and the ethics point is really important. I think it's probably something that's going to sort itself out in a boring government level, global level. The way that I see it, it's a bit like cookies. Like internet browsers used to have cookies where people used to be very liberal in how they track people on your website, and what they even track people across different websites. And they could do all kinds of things that were in the gray area of, hey, is this good for the user or not? In the end of the day, eventually, good old European Union came out with GDPR. And I think in the long run with generative AI, we're going to see something similar. Standards for what you can do, what you can't do. Can you crawl the whole content of a website and take everything, or do you have to have notice of where you get your training data for AI? I don't think that's the problem for marketers to solve if you are using the tools in an ethical way that you think is appropriate. So obviously the examples of going after a Deloitte research and writing an article about that, in my ethical perspective, that is probably different from someone else's as a marketer. But I think everyone has to make that decision of what is right and what is wrong. A bit like, when Gutenberg invented the printing press, the first books were copies of the Bible, and some people were furious that they would do something so inappropriate. Over time, of course, technology aligns with what society want, and I think the ethics issue is going to be a very important issue, but the solutions are going to come from top down rather than from us marketers bottom up.
Yeah, I really strongly agree with that.
But if I may add something to
Yeah.
that, there are ways to fight back, and we are already fighting back, not only legislatively speaking, but technically speaking.
Yeah.
So, for example, I've installed bloggers for AI trackers on our website, so you cannot crawl our website with the AI. But also now artists are using both passive and active ways. So we have tools that mask the image, so it cannot be really used. But also we have tools that poison the image. So if a AI model scrapes it and put it into the model, we can make the AI model break. So there you will see a lot more, I think, pushback coming from the artists. And coming back to the point of Gutenberg, the invention of the press the end goal was making more books, which I think, in my opinion, is a positive, net positive for the world. I'm waiting for the net positive from ChatGPT. I don't think better efficiency is a net positive.
Can I add to the point of web crawlers? I think this is a kind of a topic where we actually do agree. So web crawler is basically like a bot that comes to your website and just scrapes everything, looks what's there, and for some people it just takes your website content and takes it away and keeps it in the database. They've been around for a long, long, long time. Like a month ago I did research on web crawlers in the Finnish media. I went through all the Finnish media sites from Yle to Iltalehti and so forth. And I figured out that there's like 60% of news media in Finland currently block them. So they actively go to ChatGPT, say, no thanks, don't take my content. They go to Googlebot and they say, okay, search engines are good, training your data is wrong, stop doing that. But then there was companies like Yle, and Yle reached out to me and they were like, listen, we know that web crawlers exist, but at the moment we don't take them into practice, because we have told companies that you should not be using our content. This is the decision of Yle, and it's an ethical decision. However, as everyone knows, ChatGPT or OpenAI, who's running it, they're not going to care if the Finnish national broadcaster is legally advising them not to do it. Only when they go to court, and this is where the thing gets interesting. So, as marketers, you can make a decision and block AI from training on your data. But the other alternative to that is maybe you can actually use the training of AI data for your own good. So that comes to points like the generative search experience, where, you know, if you have content that is actually very interesting to AI bots, then all of a sudden, as a small company, you can all of a sudden get a lot of visitors and interest to you, not just from Google the old-fashioned way, but people are using things like Perplexity, or what do you call it?
Yeah.
It's like a AI-generated like app that works like a search engine, but it behaves like kind of AI. So things are getting very interesting for marketers, and there are going to be different aspects whether you should block it or embrace it.
So I have a question then for Lari about these crawlers.
Yes.
So let's say you notice like a 200% increase in web traffic in a month.
Yes.
So, and then it's all referral traffic.
Yes.
So are you saying that something like this could be some of these bots trying to scrape, and like who would be benefiting from these types of bots? Is it a competitor? Is it who is doing this and why? Like what would be the purpose?
So all the major generative AI companies either use a common bot like a CC bot, or they use their own bot like OpenAI and Facebook and Google, where they specifically they try to index and collect all the data in the world. That's their job, essentially. Now, of course, you can say that, okay, I block this specific bot. So you can go through your logs, most likely, and see, okay, there's been a bot on our website. Okay, this one I don't want to come back. Go away. But it's not always that obvious. Like, I haven't seen a use case of that going through Google Analytics or something and seeing, aha, it's this bot. But the likelihood is that you can ask for a bot to not crawl your website, but it's a hell of a lot of work to block all bots, and there's more and more of them coming every day.
Mm-hmm. But at least there is a plugin. If you want.
Disallow a star?
Oh, yeah, swearing. Let's try that.
Few more minutes.
Or yes. Questions.
Yeah. I guess there's been a lot covered, so maybe we can take some questions, and then from the questions, everyone can do like a final closing couple of words.
Yeah, this can be for anyone, maybe Lari. It's about using ChatGPT and stuff to try and generate some content, but then you realize you're in too niche of an industry or something where the training data wasn't existing at the time of training.
Yes.
And how would you solve that?
Yeah. The short answer is generative AI or ChatGPT is very good at like these what is, explain to me this, like mass topics that are like well documented, like a university lecturer. If there's a topic that they teach it in universities, there's probably going to be more than enough content on that. if you go down the rabbit hole of very niche topics, I would say think about the input you're doing. For example, like you can go into a very specific, like ask your CEO, okay, explain to me what you're talking about, and then use that as the input for those niche topics. And that's just my personal opinion.
Or like to add to that, go to your customers, talk to your customers, see what problems they have. Do traditional marketing. Do your research, talk to the customers, compile all that research, then use ChatGPT to maybe make notes out of that or to give you ideas. Divide that into a few different posts and check it yourself and make sure it's correct. But basically don't rely on anything inside of the actual ChatGPT database. Create your own database. And you do that very simply. Talk to customers, talk to your coworkers, give interviews to them, get the transcripts, put them all together, and then use that as your database.
If I can just add one thing, personally, I am from academia, so I always start from scientific research. Like whenever I'm writing, I don't do content marketing in this role, but I do a lot of product marketing, it's not product management. So I write discovery documents, and that means I always start from the academic research. And I think that's a very underrated resource for marketers, especially in niche.
Yeah, true.
I
Google
think
Scholar,
the-
all that, yeah, true.
Thank you.
I think she was first. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm now going to ask a question that I want to ask for 2 years already. So now is the time. So especially Colm might remember that I now went to Also Marketers YouTube and checked a little bit over 2 years ago. We did a panel. Back then it was pandemic time, was online. It was called Will AI Take Over Content Marketing? So it was before the whole big boom. I remember how I came up with that. I just read, I think it was Guardian, and there was an article written by Robert, and I was like, ooh, that's very unusual. Still 2.5 hours ago, it was kind of not so, and then this big boom happened, that now you can't go anywhere without talking or listening about AI. Like, what particularly happened, you think? Is it open AI? Is it like ChatGPT model? What happened?
I have an answer to that, but maybe you wanna.
I would say that, like, category creation is the answer to that. Like, before this, AI was actually quite a niche thing. Like, you had it was mostly language processing, understanding, stuff like that. But then OpenAI were working on this ChatGPT, and when they released it, it became a new category, which everybody actually understood. And it had that mass appeal because it is understandable. It's like they already know what a chatbot is. Now they talk to a chatbot and it gives them information on what they want. And what that did is it created a new category in the market. And because it created that new category now and it got very popular very quickly, that's why it's on everybody's lips. That would be my answer to it anyway.
So there was a seminal Google article that completely changed the way that we understand how to build large language models. Have you noticed how Google Translate, for example, has become much better over time?
Yeah.
So because before it was kind of translating word by word, and then they actually understood that attention mechanism, which means that you give different weight to specific word in the context. And this is how you get much better translations. So on the basis of that research, then they actually, basically what was missing was computational power. Like to run OpenAI, it takes a ridiculous amount of computational power and a ridiculous amount of money. And once they did that, then they did that, and then they introduced natural language. So you can ask questions we are talking, right, to ChatGPT. While before, the way that you would ask questions or you would interact with a large language model or any AI model was through basically coding and like this type of language. So these are like the changes. But for OpenAI, it required, like the research was already there. Obviously, they perfected it a bit, but this huge shift in computational power and huge amount of money and making it like kind of a consumer product.
I also actually, I remember something because you were talking about it, is like GPT-4, or was it GPT-3, I think came out at the time. So like the way this works is it's quite interesting. I had this guy showing me knows way more about AI than I ever will, but the way he showed me was he would pick like 2 words and ask the AI to look through its database to figure out a 3rd word which is related to this. And so like, let's say, you know, cake and blue, and the AI would come up with boy, because it would look through all the references that match these 2 words and bring them all together into this, and then it would come up with the most probable conclusion that you would get out of it. And this was like much more powerful than the previous transformers before.
Yes.
So, and it was also trained on a huge amount of data. Like Google and Meta, Google especially, like I talked about this actually in that webinar ages ago, was that Google have been working on structuring their data for years. Like, well, the example I gave back then was CAPTCHA. Like when CAPTCHA started out, this is the thing that you write in when you put in your, password and stuff to verify that you're not a robot. When they first brought this out, the way it was brought out is it showed a photocopy of a book and it showed a word. And there was always 2. And the thing is that one was the control and one was the test. So if you got the control right, then it assumed you got the test right. And then it would repeat this over a number of users until it knew what that squiggle was on a page. And they used this to train their AI to do what's called OCR, which is optical character recognition, which is how they scanned loads of books and made it possible to get all these books into a digital format. They spent years doing this. And that meant that they had created a database which was structured of loads and loads of words and images. Then they moved on. Then they started doing it with streets and signposts and fire hydrants and all this sort of thing. And that's being used to structure data so that they can power AI-driven cars or self-driving cars. It's still AI, it's the same bloody thing. So they've been doing this since, 2003? So 20 years of billions of people putting in information and structuring data for Google to put in their account password. This means that they have a database which is very understandable to their models. And that meant, and of course other companies are doing it as well, but that meant that training an AI meant that they have all this structured data to be able to compare and contrast. And if they weren't able to do that, you wouldn't have GPT today. So the funny thing is that everybody here for the last 20 years has been technically training GPT without knowing it. Congratulations. But this is very normal. You need to have structured data if you want to be able to do any comparisons between 2 words. There needs to have relationship mechanics and everything with it. So if the AI didn't have that, if it wasn't able to make the relationships, then it wouldn't be able to do any transformations. And since it can do transformations, it does have all those relationships built in. So it's not just that they scraped all Wikipedia and everything. They've actually have structured data which they can compare to and transform.
Should be.
Yeah, I went crazy with that, sorry.
More questions?
Yes. Hey, I'm a copywriter and content marketing manager, and I was. I worked with Lari. Lari was my manager, and even before ChatGPT came along, we got a lot of work done between the both of us. And the only time we ever professionally disagreed on something was the subject of ChatGPT. And I remember the day, I believe I left the boardroom quite quickly, because I thought, are they replacing me with a machine here? Now, since then I have warmed a bit to ChatGPT. I'm currently freelancing, and it does turn out to be a useful tool. I treat it as a Google search, but there's also things, coming back to your question about technical stuff, I also freelance for Tekla, who, if you want to run stuff about software, about them through ChatGPT, forget it. I mean, it's that stuff, like you were saying, you've got to go to science. My concern on the ethics here is, I know that Finland is currently flirting with recession right now, or probably in a recession. But I'm freelancing. I much prefer working around people. I'm not that interesting to be with myself all day. I like to be around people. So I've been looking for jobs to get back into an office. There's not a lot of jobs out there. I'm not sure if this has to do with the recession, which has affected Europe and especially the UK, or the influence of AI. So my question is, I have 5 years of training in creative, mainly business to customer copywriting, which required me to spend £9,000 on a degree in advertising, start my own blog, email the creator of Very Finished Problems, the book, over and over again until he gave me a chance, and I eventually landed a role. Should I continue with copywriting, or shall I just move up to Lapland and breed reindeer from because
I think I can answer this for you.
Yes.
Can I ask you one thing?
Yes.
Are you Finnish? Like, do you speak Finnish?
I'm learning Finnish, but I'm 8 weeks in.
So I can speak on this because I mentor so many international job seekers, and whenever marketers or like people that want to go into marketing came to me, I always used to say, do not go into content. And the reason is that in Finland there are so few content roles to begin with. There have always been few roles to begin with, and then many of them also required like Finnish and Swedish, right? So for that reason, I always recommended going to the fields where there is way less competition. So this is also for me. I'm a writer. I started doing some content, but then I went into technical marketing, performance marketing, marketing analytics, and all of this, because with those skills, my language skills don't matter. So I was hired for my role, even if they actually require Finnish and Swedish, because they were like, oh no, actually your skills are way better than having Finnish and Swedish. So they hired me for that.
Yeah.
So my recommendation has always been, content on its own and all in English is extremely hard. And even if you learn Finnish, you will never be competitive with the native speaker, right? So my suggestion has always been, do not just do content, and that stays the same since I joined and built my own career in marketing. And then now it's been 12 years that I'm in Finland. So my recommendation does not change because of ChatGPT. Now, of course, there is a recession. There are lots of incredibly talented people on the market, and I know and I see it every day. And unfortunately, I don't think that this is something that has necessarily a lot to do with AI. I think it has a lot to do with the size of the market and how difficult it is for international people to be hired in any role in Finland, and how content specifically is so overwhelmed. To give you just a little example, my company, everybody wants to do content. Everybody loves content. Everybody wants to have their opinion on content. You know what people don't want to do? The stuff I do. They don't want to do performance marketing, analytics, tracking, set up Google Tag Manager, whatever. Nobody's fighting me for that job. They're like, I don't know what you're doing, but you're awesome. And I'm like, awesome. There is no way less competition.
Yes.
So that would be my suggestion.
I found that answer quite reassuring, actually, because Larry taught me a huge amount, which was way outside what I think when I came to Larry, all I really knew what to do was to write and to do social media. And by the end of working with Larry, I knew how to do the script, podcasts, and he taught me so much. So it's encouraging to hear from a professional, because I've been saying to people, is this recession or is this AI or what the hell is going on? At least I've got half a brain in my head that I could develop more skills. And I think Larry will say I pick things up quite quickly. There was a few glitches, but yes.
And that's true for every marketer.
Yeah.
Nobody ever can just stay with what they know.
Yeah.
Like the only way to grow and to get jobs is that you are constantly learning new things.
Yeah.
I now do data and product. I was like, people are like, oh, you're the number person. They call me this and moving. I'm like, who? Me? The number person? I used to be a humanist in tech, and now I'm the tech person. Like, you need to be comfortable with the fact that you will constantly, always have to learn new skills and move into new things. And that's also why I studied a lot about AI, because then I can go to my organization, I write AI guidelines, I told everybody what tools they can use, what they cannot use, how to work with them, and to all our licensees, now we have the guidelines on how not to use AI, except some exceptions. So, but this is all work that I've taken, because the only thing that you need to know as a marketer is learn and be curious. If you have these two things, you will always be fine, but you need those two things.
Thank you very much.
Learn and be curious.
Yeah, I like
I
that.
have a question about the new skill that you mentioned. Actually, like performance marketing is very good, especially when we are international immigrants. But then, for example, if we just study from Coursera or like some online course, it's just like the theory. Because like if we want to improve performance, we need to learn it, and we need to have the chance to learn and like to learn how we can improve the
Nobody's gonna give you a chance, you have to take it. I started with I volunteered for 3 years. I did unpaid internships. I worked on my own things. I started my own blog. If you wait for people to give you a chance, that is never gonna happen. You have to build your own chances. Go after organizations. There are some marketers in his organization, Horizon, like there are so many, but you have to build your chances. Build your own project, build your personal brand, start posting on LinkedIn. Whatever it is, nobody's gonna give you a chance. You have to take it. You have to make it your own.
Yeah, volunteer.
I could agree with that like 100% because for me I've been struggling with like looking for a job like at some high level or then like middle level for a year or something, and I decided like how, and then I created my own company and actually started like the business that I've been like really wanted to do for like a really long time, and then I started to looking for projects internationally, and then I ended up being a CMO of a team like 70 plus people, like international team, not in Finland, but we doing things like internationally, and also like consulting practice. But then like in Finland, I guess. You can receive some job offer by chance, and it happened with me as well. But just go ahead and think outside the box. And as Erica said, really look for other options, maybe like other skills, to learn in combination with content. And it's really, I guess, useful now to combine content creation that is kind of crucial for promotion, for everything, but something extra, and you'll be like excellent specialist. And I have a question, like more practical one. how to actually check copyrights internationally for AI-generated content, like in some different countries, like continents and different languages. So how to do that? Like, what tools do you use actually to check copyrights with the texts and the visuals?
For me, I check if a large language model, so the company that has built the large language model, does not explicitly say what they are trained on, you can assume it's all copyrighted content. So unless they explicitly say that we only train on our own data, then it's all copyrighted. To give you an example, for image generation, the only company that explicitly say we are only trained on our own images is Adobe. So that's the only software that in our guidelines you are allowed to use, not to create, but to edit and enhance and things like this. But all of the other ones, if they don't say it, it means that they use copyrighted content. So that's the simplest answer, because at this point they don't have to declare. So only the ethical ones will declare. And there are now some tools that work as a licensing. So I think it's called Brain Art, something like that, where the artist can give permission and then you can use it as a licensing tool. But everything else, they all use copyrighted content at the moment.
Like ChatGPT and
everything,
like
yes.
Journey, so
all of them use stolen content, yes.
So like for some, for example, licensed products, and it's kind of crucial to be like legal.
Yes, I wouldn't. You cannot copyright images produced by these AI models that has been declared by a court in the US. So that means if you are making images with Midjourney or whatever else, first of all, everybody can just take those images, use them as much as they want, and even create the exact same image. But those are not copyrighted. So if you are making products, I would advise against it if you care about doing things, legally and ethically. And we do go after, like if you make a product with the image of Moomin made in AI, you're gonna hear from our lawyers.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, no, I'm not mean you. In general, because people think like it comes from AI, so it's not mean. Like it is. I'm like, no.
Okay, but is there maybe any difference between like 100% AI generated and maybe like 20%?
So not really, like in that sense. Like the only ones that I know, they're like you can edit your original image with AI. It's the Adobe Suite. At this point of my research, I've not found other tools that respect the copyright of artists when it comes to making any enhancements or edits with AI. I hope this is gonna change. But at the moment, this is the situation. But the first thing to check. They need to tell you what is it trained on. And if they are open, like open source, you can even check yourself. Now there is a Finnish company that built a Finnish large language model called Poro. So I asked them, and they were like, yeah, we don't use book free, which is this stolen, like hundreds of thousands of books that everybody else uses. So I was like, that's so awesome to hear. But it's in the open source, so you can check and you can see what's in there. But always, if they don't say it, ask. And if they don't reply, or if you're like, well, that if you're not explicit about it, then it's stolen.
So it isn't like useful at all to create some kind of template. I do that pretty usually, like for text, like 100%, like to create some kind of template of a text, for example, I don't know, like just read it, for example, and then create my original text based on this template.
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, it's your internal use, so it's it's up to you and how you feel about it. But there is obviously a difference between something that you're using for your internal use and something that you're using for sell, to actually sell.
But if it's kind of blog post, it's better to do that from scratch.
It's your decision. I don't write with AI. Many other people do, so it's just your personal choice.
I would argue that it's absolutely fine to do that because, if you're building a framework with AI and then you're writing your own content, that's like, going to a book and going, okay, let's look at the structure of this book. I'll write my own content based on this book and this book and this book that I've read, and that's something we've been doing since the dawn of time.
Yeah, but I don't think they are comparable.
No, but I think that is comparable. If it's not, like if you're not basically parroting, and you're not copying and pasting, if you're actually writing it in your own words, and using it as a guide, what's the problem?
For me, I don't want to externalize my thinking to a machine.
I get that, but like from an ethical point of view, it's not necessarily unethical.
For me, like, it comes down to these models are trained on copyrighted material, so I don't use them. That's a totally personal choice. I'm not saying that you should not do it. I'm just saying do your research, come up with your own decisions, and decide how you want to work with this. Everybody will make different choices. It's also, now I represent a company that is in a very specific space. Yeah. We are an art brand. This is very dear and, close to my heart and to our heart. But of course, it's also possible that in another organization, if you're like, you have to do, you have to use this tool, even if I personally disagree with it, it might be possible that, these things would change. At this point, this is my current standing on it.
Other questions?
Yeah. And
I have one more, but we've been going for an hour, by the way.
okay, so maybe this is the last question.
It's quite a practical one about SEO, because every time I try and do SEO, I feel like I go down rabbit holes and spend hours and hours and days trying to figure stuff out. Is there a good work, like a good work process using AI to help with that?
I mean, I've been in that rabbit hole for a long time now. And I think the main advice I would give, and there's probably layers that we can have after the conversation, but search engines try to give you a definitive answer of something, whereas generative AI tools like ChatGPT work more like a chat. The more you input, the more they understand what you're trying to go after. So the way that I have found most value from using tools like that for SEO is you try to have a string of conversations of interrelated topics where you try to get to the end point of what is the theme you're going after, what are the things you want to accomplish and describe as a content author. Instead of asking it to create a blog article that's 16,000 words, you simply go on a conversation with it and pick the parts you think are relevant and value adding to the way that you write yourself.
Something I've done there is I've gotten all the keywords that we rank for in SEO console, and I've exported them into an Excel file, and then I chuck them into ChatGPT and I tell it to I want topics based on some of these. And then it'll look at all of them and it'll build topics, and if I notice there's a gap, like the gap tools in Ahrefs, they do similar things as well, but I found that this was quite a nice, easy way to just quickly figure out if there are any gaps that I have in my content on the website, and it'll give me some title ideas, and then we'll work from there and see what we do.
I think the one thing to keep in mind if you're doing something like that, though, is that your messaging has to be drilled down.
You need to know what you're doing.
It will not work one little bit if you don't have the messaging. And I think maybe that brings us back, that messaging, this isn't new. It's been there since the beginning of, marketing and comms as disciplines. That messaging is where it all begins and ends. So maybe we wrap up with that today because I'm really hungry.